All right, buongiorno, good morning, nice and early, fresh from my bed. It's your boy Big Rich. I told you he was going to do a morning mob story, but first of all, very excited. I just got my Gorilla Glue. All right, so the first thing we do, we'll call this a Wake and Bake episodes for all the smokers. Throw some smoke in the air, and if you do Wake and Bake, let me know what you're smoking on this morning. I'm smoking on Gorilla Glue number 3. How many Gorilla Glue numbers are there? Right? I think there's 3 and there's 4. I don't know. Oh my God, it's so good. It is delicious. Deliciously delicious. All right, anyway, let's get down to business. We're still uh we're still dealing with this verdict in the Meldish trial. Salute to Dominic Crea and what he's doing at Justice Tech Pros. Salute to Jerry Capisci for the article, always. You already know how we get down. We throw respect on your name, sir. Let's get right into business. Hardball tactics against Wiseguy. Stephen Crea secured life sentences in Meldish murder case. The jury found them guilty as charged. So now alleged Luchese underboss Stevie Wonder Crea and 3 co-defendants are doomed to spend the rest of their lives behind bars for the 2013 gangland-style slaying of former Purple gang leader Michael Meldish. But it didn't have to be that way. Gangland has learned that a difference of a mere 3 years caused a potential plea deal between Crea and the government to fall apart. Despite having very little or no evidence linking Stevie Wonder to the Meldish murder, sources say the government demanded that Crea accept an offer of 18 years in prison to resolve the case. As part of the deal, the 2 mobsters who were convicted with him at trial had agreed to lengthy terms. Alleged former acting boss Matthew Madonna, 83, agreed to a 20-year prison sentence so that he agreed to die in jail just so Stevie Wonder could get out in 15. Salute to you, sir. Wow. Essentially resigning himself to dying behind bars. Getaway driver and Luchese soldier Christopher Ladagno, who is 46 and the only one of the group with a likely chance to survive his prison term, had agreed to do 30 years in prison. But Crea, the powerhouse mobster, rejected the deal. The sources say he insisted on a guarantee of 15, just 36 months less than what the feds were offering as part of a so-called global plea deal. As a result, the trio had to take their chances at a month-long racketeering and murder trial. In hindsight, it is now clear that Stevie Wonder should have taken the deal. Last Friday, a White Plains jury of their peers, I don't know about their peers, armed with legal instruction that permitted the panel to find Crea guilty of murder even if he had nothing to do with it, found the 3 Wiseguys and mob associate Terrence Ted Caldwell guilty of the Meldish rubout. And under the law, they all face a mandatory prison term of life without parole. Now, the scavats of a fucking judge who already was allowing injustice to tap dance all over the courtroom will probably give them life. That's what I'm saying. What Justice Tech Pros are doing right now and what Dominic Crea is doing. Check out the video I just put up. It says Justice Tech Pros. You guys got to get behind this because this case right here is, I mean, come on. Okay, it's screaming appeal. All right? It probably goes without saying that the longer the prison term in a plea offer, the more likely it is that an older Wiseguy will take his chances at trial, but we'll mention it anyway. All things being equal, it's more likely that Ladagno would serve a 30-year sentence than a 72-year-old Crea would live through an 18-year prison stretch. That would be the case, even considering the usual Bureau of Prisons protocol that reduces each sentence by 15% and the time off that each would receive for the years they spent awaiting trial. An 18-year bid for Stevie Wonder, who'd been locked up since May of 2017, would lead to his likely release at age 85. Landano, who's been behind bars 2 years longer since May 2015, will get out at the age of 71 if he were sentenced to 30 years in prison. Landano's attorney, John Marangolo, disclosed the existence of a global plea offer, which did not include Caldwell, the triggerman who killed Meldish with a single shot to the back of his head, in a public court filing a few hours after the jury convicted all four Luchese gangsters. Sources said that Caldwell, 61, also received a 30-year plea offer, but his was not tied to the mobster's global plea deal. The sources say Caldwell, a cancer survivor whose disease has been in remission for several years, rejected any prison term greater than 10 years. In late August, 6 weeks before the start of the trial, Marangolo filed a motion under seal asking Judge Kathy Seibel to intercede with prosecutors on behalf of his client. The lawyer wrote that Landano initially offered to plead guilty and accept a maximum of 20 years and eventually agreed to accept a counteroffer of 30 years from the government. Landano was willing to accept more prison time than many administration members, captains, acting captains, and soldiers have received for organized crime murders, Marangolo wrote. But he was being denied that opportunity, said Marangolo, because one of his mobster co-defendants had not agreed to accept his plea offer from the government. The lawyer declined to identify the reluctant gangster, but several sources say it was Crea. Well, that's hearsay. We don't have proof of that, first of all. Marangolo argued that for the government to hold all co-defendants in this case hostage by only offering a global plea deal not only strikes the conscience as unfair, it violates the equal protection provisions of the 14th Amendment that prohibit the enforcement of any laws that abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens in the United States. I'll read that again. It violates the equal protection provisions of the 14th Amendment that prohibit the enforcement of any laws that abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens in the United States. The attorney conceded that criminal defendants are not entitled to plea deals, but asked Seibel to grant his motion to accept a guilty plea from Landano in return for a 30-year prison term on the grounds that a plea offer made solely contingent on a global resolution is not just unreasonable, but unconstitutional. Plea offers should be relative to other similarly situated defendants charged with similar crimes. Over the years in the same jurisdiction, the Southern District of New York, wrote Marangolo, that, he argued, is what equal protection before the law should strive to accomplish. Marangolo told Gangland that Seibel decided she was not getting involved in plea negotiations and instructed him to publicly file his motion at the conclusion of the trial to preserve the issue for appeal. In another previously sealed court brief, one that was publicly filed the day after the verdict was announced, Crea's attorneys asked Seibel to sever his case from the others in order to allow them to call Landano as a defense witness to review the testimony by jailhouse informer David Evangelista that the mobster implicated Stevie Wonder in the murder of Meldish. Citing a surprise mid-trial ruling in which the judge reversed a prior decision and allowed the testimony by Evangelista, the attorneys demanded a severance on the grounds that Landano is now the only available source to rebut Evangelista's testimony that Stevie gave the order. In an affidavit accompanying the motion, Landano stated he would waive his Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination and testify as a defense witness for Crea at a separate trial. According to the motion, Landano is willing to testify that Crea never ordered him to kill Meldish. Landano would also testify that he never told Evangelista or anyone else that he killed Meldish or that Crea had ordered him to do so. He would have also testified that he was never involved in any other crimes with Stevie Wonder. In the affidavit, which was signed by Marangolo and co-counsel Louis Freeman, Landano stated that he understood that on cross-examination, the prosecution may ask him about events and other matters that could implicate him in criminal activity beyond the scope of his testimony on behalf of Crea, but he was still willing to take that on and risk everything and testify at Mr. Crea's trial. Noting that in 1968, the U.S. Supreme Court recognized the serious risk posed by powerfully incriminating extrajudicial statements of a co-defendant who stands accused side by side with the defendant, which are then deliberately spread before the jury in a joint trial. Lawyers Di Pietro and Franklin wrote The need for Mr. Landano's testimony cannot be overstated. In the government's response, which was publicly filed 2 days after the verdict, prosecutors Hagen Scott, Alexandra Rothman, and Celia Cohen argue that Crea's arguments for severance were greatly overstated. They questioned whether Landano would actually testify at a separate trial and argued that even if he did, his testimony would be cumulative of the hours upon hours of cross examination by defense lawyers who had attacked the credibility of Evangelista. They also minimized Seibel's reversal of her pre-trial ruling to block Evangelista's testimony by noting that Crea had been on notice of it for a year. And they noted that Crea has known since a June 2017 bail hearing when the government articulated its theory of the case, which it has presented at trial, that the murder of Meldish was consented to at least by Madonna and Crea, and was carried out by Stephen Crea Jr., who then asked Chris Landano and other people with carrying it out. Stevie Jr. Crea, who rejected a 10-year plea deal which required him to admit his involvement in the Meldish homicide, but copped a plea deal for relative charges with a maximum exposure of 13 years in prison, was the big winner in the case. Actually, I think there's no winners in this case. So again, good luck to Dominic and his whole team. I know they're putting together an appeal. Rosina, we stand with you. Pasquale, salute to you, sir. So, like I said, a lot of shit to deal with, but the appeal. Hopefully this appeal goes through. That's it. Everybody have a great morning. Salute. Thank you for listening. Like the video. Like the video. We need you to like the video. Of course, for my wakers and bakers, make sure you write down what you're smoking tonight, all right? I mean, what you're smoking this morning. Minka, this Gorilla Glue. Delicious. Everybody have a great morning.